Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Pioneering Innovative Arts Teaching and Learning in Challenging Times collaborative series. Please know that this is being recorded and will be posted so that you can access it at a later time. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box and I will read them for Eric. He does have scheduled times in which he will be stopping to answer questions along the way. This, I'm not sure who's controlling the PowerPoint, but if they could advance to the next slide. So welcome to our series. You can see here how we have had a series of webinars. By clicking on the bolded blue will lead you to where they are currently posted. What I'd like to do now is turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Dee Hansen. Please know that Dr. Dee Hansen is well regarded in the field of arts. She recently retired from University of Hartford as professor, chair of graduate studies in music education, and director of the Hart Summer Term at the Hart School. She has authored many books in her career and has been a consistent advocate for strong arts curricula in the schools. She's currently Professor Emeritus at University of Hartford and President of the Connecticut Arts Administrators Association. So Dr. Hansen.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And I would like to give a shout out to Melissa too. She has been a wonderful supporter of all of us in the arts at the State Department of Education, and we're really grateful for everything that you have done with us and for us. The Connecticut Arts Administrators Association is an organization that was formed several decades ago, and we have been actively pursuing a lot of relationships with other arts organizations across the state, not only at the school level, but with state arts organizations as well. We annually do a professional development series each year. We have an opportunity to go to the state capitol, hopefully again this year in May, to honor those advocates in our school districts who have been very supportive of the arts work within the school. And we also offer a summer institute in which people are encouraged to come in teams from school districts as well as artists to come together to create curriculum, either based on the national standards for the arts or the various standards within districts. We have a number of collaborative districts initiatives, as you can see on the slide, which is blinking on my end. We also have created a guide to K-12 program development in the arts, which was a revision from the earlier one back around 2000. This one is based on the 2014 national standards. So with that, I would like to now introduce Jason Bouchard. And as the interim president of CMEA, and Jason, we appreciate all of your leadership as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. So I am here to talk about the Connecticut Music Educators Association a little bit for everyone today. As you well know, we have really spent this year working with everyone who's on our executive board and our other commissions, such as our Professional Development Commission and our Student Affairs Commission, to really reorganize a lot of the things that we have so that way we can be a better resource for teachers. So one of the big things you'll find on our website now is an entire tab dedicated to professional resources, remote learning resources. You'll see also that we have Facebook and social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and through those as well, you'll see other initiatives like a lesson of the week. You're also going to see that a survey has gone out about sharing different types of band literature now as well, rating that, creating a vehicle for us to have those conversations about what's a really good piece or what types of pieces are people using. And we'll be sending those surveys out every couple months, so that way the information is always going to change, and you're always going to find that on CMEA.org. So continue to look for that kind of things and those types of things happening. We're also entering in partnerships of all of our state organizations on music. Okay, ACDA, ASBDA, Connecticut ASTA, Connecticut PSA, KSNEA, CAAA as well, and the SFMETEA, which is our NAFME side of our collegiate members. We are working to incorporate our collegiate members as well into our organization and into our state as a larger development. Ongoing CMEA professional development opportunities, our webinars, PD outreach, and coffee and conversations. Our coffee and conversations are a huge hit. They happen on Wednesdays, generally around 5 o'clock, and we have those throughout the year. So we'll have 3 more opportunities for that as well. And they're very low-key, very relaxed way for colleagues to get together and talk about them. Our biggest PD program coming up is going to be our All-State Conference, which is going to be March 27th to 28th as well. So we hope to see you all there. There's other opportunities on the PD committee to join as well, which meets virtually every month. Right now on Thursdays, always looking for new members as well if you're interested. So enough about CMEA. Let's turn this over now to Eric. Eric has taught general music and music technology at Regional School District 8 since 2016. He has also served as the district's instructional technology coach for the past 3 years. He received a Bachelor of Science in Music Education from Western Connecticut State University in 2013 and a Master of Music Education with a technology emphasis from the Hart School, University of Hartford in 2016. Recently, he has co-authored the Media Arts section of the 2017 Connecticut State Department of Education, The Arts, a guide to K-12 program development publication, which is used across the United States in order to help arts educators develop curriculum and arts programs. In 2019, he presented at the Audio Engineering Society's 2019 Audio Educators National Conference. His technology certifications include Google Certified Educator Level 1 and 2, and Trainer, Chrome, OS, IT Administrator, Microsoft, Apple, Screencastify, Edpuzzle, Flipgrid, Explain Everything, and is a common sense educator for 2019 to 2021. He is currently pursuing a Master of Arts in Educational Technology from the University of Connecticut. So I'd like to welcome Eric today for our professional development. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you, Jason, for the introduction. And first off, I wanted to thank everyone for being here. I know teaching now is it's incredibly difficult, and I appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to be here. So today I wanted to go over teaching music composition using technology in your classrooms. And really quickly, I'm going to go over a few of the resources before we get into this. And I put little QR codes there, and in the handout, these are also hyperlinked as well, so you can also click on the wording and it should bring up the link. If it doesn't, you can also scan the QR code. And I'll go through each of these resources in just a minute. I have my class music website, which I'll go over. I have a educator page for music teachers where I have all my rubrics and resources that I use, so it's all compiled onto one web page, and I update it as often as I can. And then since I'm also the instructional technology coach for the school district, I'm going to go over my instructional technology page that our teachers use in our district. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is I'm just going to reshare, and I'm going to go to my browser. And the first resource I'll go over is going to be the instructional technology website that I use in our district and that our teachers in the district use. So just moving through the homepage here, you have a homepage, and then there's nothing really, when you scroll down, it's just a landing page. But at the top, you have a bunch of drop-down resources. So I have under staff resources, this is what our staff uses. So I have like our Tech Tuesday, which is our technology tip for the week, and I post that weekly. I have some templates, but they're hidden just for our teachers. But if you do want any templates, I can always, if you email me, and I'll just go back to when I go back to the slides, I'll restate my email again. You can always email me at any time, and I'll email you any templates that I have. Moving down, There won't be too much here that will be, this is kind of more for in-district, but I also go over the SAMR and TPAC models for technology. So if you are interested in using more technology beyond what you would just use this year, this would be a good resource as well. Moving over to the next tab, I do have some student resources and parent resources. So these are mainly, again, for instructional technology and technology resources. And I also have copyright. So if you do want to ever go through any of these, I can click on some now and go through, but I have resources for Chromebooks with a bunch of how-to videos, a bunch of help guides, applications students can use. Again, the copyright page is there. And then primary resources for library media, research tools, APA and MLA formatting. And you won't be able to get, this is our Media Center catalog, but that won't pertain to you. Also going over, again, if you want any technology resources for parents, and I do have a page on copyright that students use. So when we're going over publishing, music, audio, using pictures, we usually like to have our students follow copyright law. So I do have a guide for them there. Moving over to the next tab is our data privacy, which I will get into because I know that the data privacy law that's new to the state of Connecticut is probably a big topic going on right now, so I'll go over that as well when we get into the slides. If you are a Google school, I have each of the Google applications here from Google Workspace, and you can go over those, and they have how-to videos and documents and anything you would need on there. And then on the next tab, I have a bunch of different applications that we use in our district. And again, how-to videos, how-to documents that you can access on there for any of these applications. So the website is completely open. So if you do want to, if you ever want to head over there, again, I have the link that I'll bring up again on the slides in a few seconds that you can use. Moving over to the next website is this is my educator page. So I have this for any teachers who want to use any of my music assignments. And again, most of them these are for my high school courses. But you can also adapt a lot of them for middle school as well. So I have 3 main classes that are music technology that I teach, and that would be music production. And these are all the list of the projects here on the left-hand side that the students complete. We usually try to get through most of them, depending on the year. This year it's a little more challenging teaching remotely. We usually don't get through all of them, but we try to get through as many as we can. And then on the right-hand side here, this is a Google Drive folder that's public that you can access all my rubrics and assignments for those projects. So if you ever want to go in there and take any of them and adapt them for yourself or use them exactly as they are, you're more than welcome to. The next class that I have is a film scoring class. And again, these are all their projects that they complete in class, and then their corresponding rubrics. And then the last class is specific to audio production, recording, and acoustics and music industry. So this is more not just like a project-based class. They do projects, but they also it's also lecture-based, and students work together on projects, assignments, presentations. So I put all those assignments and documents I use in the class in this folder that is also public, so you can grab anything that you want from there. And the units are on the side, so you can kind of, if you only want something in music industry, you can just go to you can see that it's unit 4. You can go through the different review documents and in-class assignments that are organized by the unit in there. Okay. On the bottom, the very bottom of the web page, I have all the software and the hardware and the different resources that we use, or that I use in my classes, and they're also hyperlinked, so you can click on them and get to their web page, their corresponding web page, in case you want to use them as well. Okay. And then that's my educator page, and then I also have on our music department website, I have my drop down, and it also has each of my classes that I teach in here, including my middle school class. And you can go on to any of those websites, and some of them have very similar information, but they also have some other tips and things that you could possibly use in case you do want my syllabus or something that would be on there, different definitions for topics to go over in class and all that. So you're more than welcome to go to any of that. I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint. So again, I'll leave this up for a second. If you do want to take any of those websites with the QR code, you can generally on a smartphone, you can usually open up your camera, and it should recognize the QR code and scan it. And again, if you can't access any of those for any reason, I'll just go one slide up. That's my email at the bottom here, and I'm always, as a technology person, always on email. So you can email me anytime, and I usually get back within a day or two, if not quicker. So you're more than welcome to email me anything that you would want. So moving on, I wanted to first go over data privacy, because I know this new Connecticut law was put into effect in 2018, was really the most recent addendum to that law. So I just want to kind of go over what that means now, especially in the pandemic, and how you can navigate it, especially in your music class. So Connecticut Public Act 16189 is a law that was enacted a couple years ago, and it basically says in a nutshell that every school must enter into a contract with if students are logging into an account, if they have to transmit any data to a company through a remote server, that school needs to enter into a addendum contract with the company. And then that addendum contract has guidelines based on what the state of Connecticut has said. And the guidelines are actually pretty well written in the way where they're very broad, and that the individual districts can kind of tailor those to the district needs. So a lot of it does seem kind of strict, but it actually is kind of following through with what other states are doing. And there are other states that do have stricter data privacy laws than what Connecticut has, such as California. And even I'm seeing, since I manage the data privacy contracts for our district, that the new European law, data privacy law, is actually a lot stricter. And most companies already have to comply with that. So complying with the individual Connecticut addendums are not that super complicated. It's usually just a matter of getting the company to answer your email, and or from whoever within that district, whoever in your district manages that. So within that data privacy law, there's also Executive Order 71, which is enacted right now during the COVID-19 pandemic. And what that says is Connecticut has a educational technology software hub that lists these different software companies, different contractors for technology that have said they will become compliant with Connecticut data privacy law. So what the Executive Order 71 currently says is, as long as they have pledged compliancy with the Connecticut law, that the districts don't need to have a separate addendum contract for that piece of software. So for example, I'll use such as NoteFlight as an example. They will sign the addendum, but because they're on the Connecticut data privacy pledge, if your district isn't able to get an addendum contract with NoteFlight, for example, it is okay to use NoteFlight as long as they have pledged compliancy. Again, you should probably check that to make sure with whoever your data privacy, the person responsible for data privacy in your district is, just to kind of make sure that it's okay. So you're not just going and using it without making sure, because if it's not compliant, then you don't want to be on the repercussion side of that. So it would be important just to make sure that it is okay to use the software. But with Executive Order 71, it does allow for a lot more leniency during the pandemic. And they haven't really said when that's going to end. Right now, it is still, the Executive Order 71 is still in effect. My personal guess would be, I haven't heard anything, but I would assume it would be at least to the end of the school year. Next year would be a different story. So again, you still have to check in with your data privacy person in your district, but that should help everyone a little bit, especially now. And what does this mean for data privacy in Connecticut schools? It just means, in reality, it was a little bit harder a couple of years ago because of this was all very new, and these different software companies never kind of dealt with this before. But I have seen that it has kind of ironed itself out recently. My district in particular, we have a little over 150 addendum contracts with different software companies. And I remember when it first came out, we were kind of struggling to get them pretty quickly, and some of the teachers were kind of upset. But most of the very popular ones now that teachers use, they're pretty, you can still use, most of them you can use now once you get that contract, or as long as they're on the Connecticut Data Privacy Hub during Executive Order 71. So it's, again, check with the manager for your data privacy in your district, but most music applications that you would want to use, I think, are on there, at least for, again, for teaching composition. So moving on to the next bullet point down, we have, that I know have, that are on the Connecticut Data Privacy Hub, are Noteflight, Soundtrap, Smart Music, Flat, and Sight Reading Factory. So those software companies have all pledged compliancy, which means that, again, pending just making sure that you get approval from your data privacy manager, that you should be able to use those without having a separate contract. Now, once that Executive Order 71 is no longer in effect, then your district would have to have a separate contract with them. So every district is handling that differently. My district is a lot smaller, so I know what we're telling teachers is I have a spreadsheet and I write down which applications we're using that are under Executive Order 71 versus the ones we have contracts for, and I write down which teachers are using it, so I know to email them once Executive Order 71 is no longer in effect, to tell them they can't use it anymore. And usually since they're in effect right now, I'm trying to get a contract with them, even though we do kind of have that leniency. The sub-bullet right here is just be careful when you have students under 13 years of age, because some applications don't allow you to make accounts with those students. It might require a signature from a parent or guardian. So I know in particular Soundtrap does not allow students under 13 years of age to make a free account with them. They have to be over 13 before they can make a free account. But if you do pay for the premium version, then you're in this walled garden website that you get they get their own walled garden. So that wouldn't really apply to them. So it depends on the application. They're all different. Some of the applications, you have to have the premium version. Some you have to have a signature from a parent or guardian. So they're all different. And I'm not sure on Noteflight, Soundtrap, or Smart Music, because we pay for those in our district. We don't use, Flat is very similar to Noteflight, so we use Noteflight. And I don't teach band, so I'm not in chorus, so I'm not sure if we're using, they might be using Sight Reading Factory, but they're using just the web version of that, so the students don't have to make accounts. So again, it'd be helpful to check with your data privacy person, even reaching out to the company if you do think you want to use any of these resources, and just checking to make sure that if you do have students under the age of 13, that they don't require special signature or anything like that. Noteflight, Soundtrap, Smart Music, and Flat all have free versions. Or actually, I don't know about Smart Music. Noteflight, Soundtrap, and Flat all have free versions. So you can use those in your class, again, as long as the students are able to make accounts. And the next slide is just any questions on data privacy before we move on to more composition stuff. Any questions I didn't answer you have? Okay, and again, if you do ever have any questions on data privacy, you're always free to email me. I do manage them for my district, so I pretty much answer most things. I've seen most things at this point, doing it for a couple years now. So the next slide is just composition.
Eric, there's a question about how does this impact private schools?
Where does she see that?
That's a good question. I am not 100% sure on private schools, but I can look into it. If I don't know who asked the question, but if you want to email me, I can get back to you on that, because I do have some contacts I can ask. I also have the law. I have to pick through it a little bit, but I'm not sure if it applies to private schools or just public schools. I have to verify, but it won't be a hard question to answer. Are there any other questions?
Not right now.
Okay. And if you're thinking of something with data privacy, I also have another questions slide coming up that I can you can insert it always there as well. So for composition, between the different software programs, there's usually traditional music notation and electronic notation. So Noteflight and Flat use traditional notation, kind of like a Finale and Sibelius. And Soundtrap, and I know BandLab is another one. BandLab was one I didn't talk about before just because they're not listed on the Connecticut Data Privacy Hub, and I wasn't able to get in contact with anyone there to answer my question about if they would sign the addendum. So again, students can use they can use it on their own, just you can't use it in a class setting, and you can't make students use it without getting that contract. So most of my stuff now will kind of be aimed towards Soundtrap because they did sign the data privacy contract. So again, Soundtrap is more, and BandLab would be more electronic style notation, which kind of looks like GarageBand if you have seen GarageBand before, or Logic or any other digital audio workstation software. So the question I usually get is, which one do I use or which one do I use first? So I always say it depends on your class and your age level and prior knowledge, and it's kind of up to you to assess. I usually I teach 7th grade through high school, so I usually like to start with electronic notation with our 7th graders, and they're coming from our middle and high school is a separate district than our 3 feeding elementary schools. So with that, I'm also getting some different variations on prior knowledge and all of that when they're coming in. So I like to start with electronic notation and kind of build upon the basics of musical form with my 7th graders, and then introducing them in the same class later on in the quarter to traditional notation. And that's just my preference. Again, you might like traditional notation first. Maybe some of your students dealt with traditional notation early on, or they haven't really dealt with electronic notation, but they are pretty competent with traditional music notation. So you want to maybe start with that and then move into electronics once they have really good fundamentals. Again, like I stated before, I love to use musical form, and that's great with my 7th graders because again, they're coming in from different elementary schools, and musical form is definitely something that they do in the elementary school. So it's a great way to kind of bring everyone together and kind of review those basics, in addition to kind of doing traditional notation at the same time. I do a lot of listening examples, so I'll do some pop music with them, and that kind of gets them excited, especially because they're coming into a new school district. So starting with some listening examples and having them identify the form, going over what the different types of form are, they really enjoy that. And then they get to obviously make their own songs using Soundtrap. I go over both classical and pop form, but with classical form with my middle schoolers, I usually start with just simple A-B form, ABA form, AABA, so binary and ternary form. We don't really get into too much more than that, just because when I'm feeding my middle schoolers, they're actually would be going to high school, and if they're not in band or chorus, they would have me again in the high school for my high school music technology classes. So I know what I teach up there. So I don't go too much into the really heavy classical forms that would be different, like rondo and all that. That would be, they might cover that in band or other forms in chorus, but I usually stick with pop form. So I try to relate that classical form, that ABA, and then bring that over into their pop form so they can kind of see how they're similar and how they're different. And I do that with teaching composition. So I'll have them start with Soundtrap and have them make me a song using AB form. I want it to have 2 sections using the different loops that are in the different sound bites that are in Soundtrap. And we'll go over Soundtrap first so they understand that, and then we'll work on making that song. I also find that it's important to, again, with those listening examples, to kind of really make it so they kind of have a strong foundation, so they know since they have the listening examples, they know what to do when they're composing, because they've heard it before. They kind of have an idea of how to guide themselves over to what a song should sound like. And then moving into the advanced features of the software, again, this is mostly with Soundtrap. So in electronic software, I usually focus on inputting MIDI. Now this is a lot harder this year because like we have a keyboard lab both at the middle and high school with the students could plug in their computers, but we're not allowing students to use the keyboard just because of all the touching and the disinfecting that we would have to do. So Soundtrap does have a click and drag feature where you can input your own notes. So it does take a lot more time because they can't just play it or like press the key and input the notes. So they are clicking and dragging, but it does make them think a little bit more. So I usually kind of show the students this is how you click and drag. And then I also show the students who might have a keyboard at home if they have, if they bring their school device home and they have a keyboard at home, I show them how they can plug it in and use the keyboard to also use the software. Again, I usually mostly focus on MIDI and that original composition in high school, but I do explain it to my middle school students because there are a few who have a strong background in music, who, especially I have 7th graders, so some of them have been taking private lessons and they kind of have that strong background, or they have a strong tech background and they kind of want to experiment a little bit more. So once I kind of get into those advanced features in that form with electronic notation, we build that fundamentals. Then we get into steady beat with the students. So I move now into note flight with traditional notation. So at this point, I'm going over reviewing treble clef and bass clef and what the different notes are. I'm going over different rhythms such as whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note, and 16th notes. And at this point, they're also performing what they're creating in note flight. This is a lot more challenging to have them perform this year. So what I'm using is Screencastify as a tool to help them perform on their own and then submit those recordings to me. And Screencastify is great because they just actually changed it. It was perfect timing. They changed it last year. So the free version, they actually have 5 minutes on the free version. And if you have the paid version, it's unlimited. But the free version has 5 minutes and any student can make an account. They do sign this Connecticut Data Privacy Pledge. So that's all set. And if you're a Google school, when they record in Screencastify, it saves right into their Google Drive. So then that can be either uploaded to Google Classroom, or if you're using Schoology, that can also be added into Schoology or any other LMS that you're using. So that's kind of how I've gotten performance. And again, I usually like to do group performances, but I find it's a lot harder this year. In my classes, my middle school classes are 10 weeks and they're 4 quarters. So I only have my students for 10 weeks. And then just because of our hybrid schedule this year, it's a little harder to kind of do group performances. So I've been focused mainly on individual performances, but then I meet with the students individually and we go over kind of like what they did well and what they could have done better with in regards to steady beat and all of that. I also introduced.
Excuse me, Eric.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We have a question from Amber Harris. It says, when students are performing, is that on their own home keyboards or on another instrument?
Oh, for the MIDI. So if they have it, they usually perform on their own. If they have their own keyboard at home, I allow them to play the keyboard into Soundtrap or even Note Flight if they want to. I do even offer students to make, I'm really open to what they want to do. So I kind of make my projects kind of open-ended and they have a few guidelines and then they can add whatever they want on top of it. So I do have students who sing or play instruments. So they might even make their own like ostinato rhythmic pattern. And then if they want to play their instrument, they can improvise over that. So it's all dependent, but usually in Soundtrap, it's usually their own digital keyboard that they have at home. And I'd say about 1/3 of my students usually have some sort of keyboard they can play into, but I know that varies across. I've had it vary from 1 student has a keyboard to like 10 students have a keyboard. So, but usually it's digital. And then I also, after kind of focusing on steady beat, I also introduce instruments and genres, and that gets into kind of a little bit of a ranging. I do that in middle and high school. I do more of it in high school because they do a little more advanced composition, but just to kind of so they understand what instruments would go with which genres and how you make them intertwine them so they can kind of arrange their own songs. I also get into editing tools within the software. So again, this is more on the Soundtrap side. but I introduced fading in, fading out, panning, reverb and echo. And even in the high school, I get into compression and all that. This is a lot harder this year just because of the tools that are in the software. They're not they're not a digital audio workstation that's based on like a computer. They're all cloud-based, so they don't have the super advanced features, but I find this works still pretty well for most of what I want to do. And again, I focus on it more in the high school, but I also do focus on it a little bit in the middle school with fading in and fading out and panning the sound to the left speaker or the right speaker. They generally can understand what that is. They all understand what fading in and fading out is, and volume and dynamics. I also use soundscapes a lot to really practice the use of editing tools and automation. Just because with soundscapes, I use the BBC sound effects database. It has 14,000 free sound effects that students can use, all royalty free. And I can actually, if you email me, I can always, if you need that link, but I think if you just go to Google, type in BBC sound effect library or BBC sound effects database, it should be one of the first links that pop up. And they have 14,000 sound effects in there. And I usually like to have the students create soundscapes so they can pick some sort of soundscape. So some pick the rainforest. I've had some students pick, a lot of students pick the rainforest. Some do like a storm, like a thunderstorm. I've had some students do like a relaxing soundscape, so they find relaxing sounds and kind of compose that. And we try to use the automation and the editing tools in there. So I tell them, for example, if they're in the rainforest and they have these footsteps that are coming, how do you make the sound pan from like the right headphone to the left headphone so it makes it sound like it's moving across the speakers, and having those sounds fade in and out as they come in and they leave. And I find if I do that with the editing tools, it gives them more of a more solid foundation when they want to use those editing tools in their music, because they've already kind of had that experience in using them in a way where they understand it. Because using those editing tools in music isn't really, they're not used to it, but they do understand how sound moves in relation to objects moving across in front of their ears. So I try to kind of start with that, and I find that helps a lot. And then another question I get is, do I need a computer lab? And I say, no, you don't, because all you need is for most of the software, you just need a Chromebook, a laptop, or a desktop. And a lot of them work on phones and tablets too. But using a phone or tablet could be a little difficult, more on the phones. The tablets aren't too bad, but the phones are a little more challenging on the actual interface of the application for students in a school environment. But I know that, I'm pretty sure that most schools, because of the different state grants and everything that come out during the pandemic, I'm pretty sure most students do have a device at this point. So again, most of these software that I'm introducing are free, or they have a free version, and you can use them on a Chromebook, laptop, or desktop, and most of them have some sort of mobile application as well. Soundtrap, Noteflight, and Flat are all cloud-based, and all three of those have paid and free tiers. Now you don't always get the super premium features out of the free tiers, but before they have enough to kind of introduce composition and technology to the students and do what you want to do. If you were doing a full-fledged music technology course, it would be probably a little more hard. You need probably the paid tier to do that, but just to incorporate it at some point in the curriculum, the free tier is definitely more than enough. And the paid tiers usually offer more classroom management tools and advanced features, or they even offer additional sounds. So I find sometimes the paid tier does work better. And again, I know it's difficult to share, especially with funding and different grants and stuff like that. I'm not sure. I don't think Soundtrap and Noteflight are doing any sort of discounts right now in terms of, because of the pandemic, and I'm not sure on Flat because we don't use that one. But again, the free versions are usually sufficient for what you'll need to use. Some programs do require a paid tier for a data privacy compliance, and this doesn't really apply to any of the music software right now, because all three of these, including Smart Music and Sight Reading Factory, they all pledge compliancy with the Data Privacy Hub. So because of that executive order that's in effect, you don't need the special addendum to use this software. So this would be more applicable after that executive order. is not in effect anymore, at least for the music software. But I have run into some applications that we are trying to use in the district, not music-based ones, but other ones that they won't sign our data privacy addendum because we haven't paid for the software, which I don't think is right, but that's my opinion. I would like to try the software before purchasing it. And you can also connect MIDI keyboards to Chromebooks or other computers, and they do work well with the cloud-based application. So I do find that students who, again, kind of going back to that, I have some students who want a little bit more, or they need more of a challenge, and they do have a MIDI keyboard or some sort of USB keyboard that can be connected to a Chromebook or a laptop or their desktop. I kind of help them out with that in class. Is there any questions on going back to that? Any questions on digital music composition, or even going back to the data privacy?
There are no questions currently written in the boxes.
Okay, and I have another slide coming up for questions as well towards the end. So for projects, this is kind of what I do in my classes. I'll go over what I find helpful and what I find useful. So I love project-based learning. And I do middle schools, it's like a hybrid project-based learning. They do some assignments and they do some longer-term projects. I do find the projects in middle school are a little bit more difficult, especially in the pandemic, just because of they might not have that same focus that some of the high school students do. So that's why I kind of do a hybrid of it. A lot of my high school students, though, are all project-based learning with my music production class and my film scoring class. So between 7 through 12, I do a lot of having students create their own ringtones, original songs. They do film scoring, a character melody, or like the same thing as a leitmotif. So I do a lot of that, and you can even see they've done podcasts on my website on the educator page. It has all the projects that I've done. So these are just kind of some other ones I've pulled out that I find work really, really well. And I'll try and introduce certain musical techniques into each one. So I might have like the students create a character melody, but they have to use these certain instruments, etc. In film, in the original song, we usually cover form. So I usually cover like ABA form or verse chorus form. And in the ringtones, I usually try to focus on some sort of audio editing. And the one I didn't add was the soundscape into here, but I added them here. Soundscapes as well. I do a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous, but my asynchronous is never really asynchronous. So I'll kind of explain that. When I'm doing project-based learning, I do have students usually, because when we're virtual or we're in person, we're in a hybrid, I do have students in class. So we do a synchronous learning where I have the students in front of me. And during asynchronous times, because it's project-based, I usually use that time to meet individually with each student. And I usually just do a quick 3 to 5 minute check-in with each student. And I do that twice a week with them. And then the other day, we're usually synchronous. And that check-in kind of helps with a lot of different, helps fix any issues they're having, help them with music. And I even find that it's helpful in terms of just like a social emotional standpoint as well. I find that having that asynchronous time where you're meeting with them one-on-one, they kind of open up to you and you kind of see how they're doing and stuff like that. So I like to have those one-on-one check-ins. And with that, I think they really enjoy, because all of a sudden they might not like to speak up in class, but the second they're one-on-one, they just like to tell you everything about what they're doing in their project and their song. And you come up with a bunch of ideas with them on how to progress moving forward with it, and they get all excited and they go back and they keep working on it. So I kind of like the way we're doing this right now, and I find I have like a lot of success kind of having off the whole class, and then the class goes and works on their projects, and I have meeting times with every student individually during a certain time. That's why I just mentioned right there, the regular check-ins individually and as a class. In high school, I usually do a ringtone, musical form, character melody, soundscape, and I even do a their choice project where they get to create their own rubric with me. They don't get to put whatever they want in it, but together we create their own individual rubric, and they all usually add up to the same on a total points system. So they all add up to like 30 or 40 points, and we kind of make the rubric kind of fit whatever they want to do for their project. So they really like that one. In the middle school, I usually do a lot with musical form, character melody, and ringtones. And I'm even going to try next quarter more with the soundscapes and maybe do different types of soundscapes. I find that reflection works awesome. I love to do reflection in the class, and I started with paragraph reflection, but now I'm doing more with Flipgrid. And I started that more this year. I find the students really, and I'll explain in the next slide. The reflection is nice because not after every project, but after some of the, usually every other, I usually have them reflect and either write me a paragraph or use a Flipgrid, whichever one they like. And it helps them with their next project because they listen to what they did and they critique it, and they know what they did wrong and stuff. And then we usually meet afterwards and talk about the reflection and talk about what they'll use in their projects moving forward. So I really like reflection. I even sometimes have them do an outline before the project. It's a longer term project. Have them do an outline and tell me how they're going to chunk the project, because some of the students now, especially being online so much, they need that guidance. So I usually have them come up with like a chunking plan, what they're going to do each class period. And then that really helps in the reflection. I usually have them go back, look at their outline and tell me, did they follow their outline? What went wrong? What would they change if they did it again? Those sorts of questions. For my second master's right now in educational technology, I had to do a sample, kind of like a quick study. So I did do mine on reflection, and I kind of analyzed data between written reflections and verbal reflections between my students. So this is actually the data that I got, and then I did a post survey as well. So you can kind of see, besides this one outlier here with the written one, most of the orange and the green bar on the graphs are the verbal reflections, and this light blue and the blue are my written reflections. And on mechanics, depth of reflection and language use, I always found that the verbal was either really much higher or it was just a little bit higher. So I did 4 individual times where the students reflected. And the study wasn't perfect because we were, with the pandemic, we were in and out of school, and there was winter break in there and all that. So it wasn't a perfect study, but I did find that the verbal reflection, they tend to produce a little bit better results than the written one. And from the post survey that I did, I had the students write, so I took out their names, but they said things such as the writing sometimes can be more tedious, resulting in me rushing through the reflection, and speaking is a much easier way for me to get my thoughts off my mind as opposed to writing or typing them. So I did find Flipgrid was a great way to do that. And they don't even have to have their camera on for Flipgrid. They just have to, it's just speaking. So you can experiment on yours if you want to do a written or a verbal, but those are just the results that I've seen. So I have just a few more slides. So I'm not going to play all of each example, but I do have 5 different examples here from my students just so you can see. So the first one is a middle school character melody. So I'll move into that one. And I think this one was actually from a Star Wars character. It was one of the Sith characters in Star Wars. I'm just going to play a little bit of each one. So that was one of my 7th graders, and they did they wanted to create the character theme from one of the Sith characters from Star Wars. So that's what they came up with for one of their second project they did in class. I was pretty impressed by that one. The next one is, let me go back to the slide, is a middle school form project. So this one actually isn't this one's from one of my colleagues, one of her students, and this was their final project. And again, this was their benchmark, so we have the same we have the same rubric and the same project that we completed. She did hers with video that first time and I didn't. I'm doing mine with video the second quarter, and they haven't completed them yet. So I want to just show you what they did with a video one. So this is one of my colleagues' students' projects in 7th grade. And that was what she did was they had to use actually 3 different programs. They used Soundtrap, Noteflight, and WeVideo, and they had to compose something in Noteflight, which is that piano part, and then they brought that into Soundtrap, added more sounds, and then took it out of Soundtrap and put it into WeVideo. If you haven't used WeVideo, it's like a if you know what iMovie is on like a Mac or an iPhone or an iPad, it's like a web-based iMovie, and there is a free version of that as well, which is nice. So they brought their music and they put it behind one of those free videos. The next one is one of my high school forum projects. So this is one, again, I won't put the whole thing. The next 2 are just ABA songs that some of my high school students made. So their project was to make this is one of their first ones, I think their first or second project they did for me in class. And they had to use ABA form. They had certain guidelines beyond that. And then they had to also use some editing tools, which probably won't come through really specifically here, but if I looked at the actual musical score, you would see those. We kept playing, it would go back to the A section eventually. So what we worked on with that one was some of that was they did some original music. So they took their own drums and they had to put it in. They actually lined it up and we focused on steady beat in that song. So they brought their own loops in from within Soundtrap. And we also used, they clicked and dragged their own notes and we had to focus on lining those up. And then they added some of the editing tools to those. So that's actually what the next 2 are as well. This next one was the same project, just a different student. So again, adding their own drums into it, or their own, it could have been any instrument. The other student chose drums, but any of these could be any instrument of their choice, and kind of focusing on that steady beat with keeping an ABA form and then adding the editing tools in there. Keep bringing it to mute myself. They did an A section, a B section, and then an A section again. And the last one is again one of my high school, same project, one of my other high school students. So those are just a couple of the projects my students have done so far this year. And they've done many more. That's just some of the highlight ones that I took out. Moving on to the next slide. So just SEL, social emotional learning, and how I kind of use that in my classes as well. So students, obviously, they want and need music right now, especially during the pandemic and all of this virtual learning and staring. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that I'm doing digital composition while they're already staring at a screen all day. But I find that I can actually have them take away from the screen, kind of think about what they want to do with those soundscapes and everything. And I think I always make sure they put down the screen because they do want to do more music than they do in class. They like the class, they like the project. So I always tell them, make sure you take a break. But composition promotes creativity. It promotes critical thinking, collaboration, and many other 21st century skills. So the collaboration, because I also have them listen to each other's works virtually as well. So they might share with each other and have each other critique them. Students also feel accomplished when they complete a project that they spent many class periods working on. So when I say you have 2 weeks to work on this project and we're going to chunk it, and they go back and they see how they started with their reflection and they see what they ended with, they feel a sense of accomplishment. And usually I'm actually coming towards the end of my first semester and moving on to my next classes in second semester. So in a week or two, I'll actually have my students go back and have them listen to their very first project before they knew all of this, and show them, look what you've learned over the course of the semester. Because even though it looks like you just completed 10 or 11 different projects, look at what you first did when you could just click and drag, and now all these different musical elements you're putting in there. And that really also kind of shows them a sense of accomplishment, and really makes them enjoy and appreciate it, I think, a lot more. And I find a lot of my students come back and email me and say, I've been making these different songs and stuff like that. So having composition and using this technology and just music in general, it acts as an outlet, and we all know this already, it acts as an outlet where they can get away from their other stressors and everything else they're doing in their other classes and anything else that might be stressing them in their outside of school. And I find that project-based learning really allows for check-ins with every student individually. You can see their progress, but you can also see how they're doing emotionally. And I can also kind of help them a lot more. They might not be they definitely won't when you have 15 plus students in a room, or virtually in a virtual room. They don't really want to tell you how they're doing, but when you meet with them one-on-one, they tell you, oh, this is going on. And I'm always lenient with all my projects. I always will accept them late, usually as long as they have a plan on when they're going to complete it. And I think making those projects their own, it really, really gets them excited and really helps them out. And I think they really enjoy music. And I'd say at least 1/3 to half my students are usually repeat students that I've had in previous years taking other classes of mine. So I really enjoy having them again and seeing what else they're doing, what else they want to create in these other classes. Other technology applications that I use, and all these companies will sign the data privacy addendums with the Public Act 16189. We have entered into addendums with each one, so I know they will. You don't have to pay for them either.
Eric, I
Yep.
think you have to stop showing the video, hit that button so that it goes back to your slides.
Oh, am I showing the video still?
Yeah, it's still showing it. So
Oh, sorry.
that's okay.
Here we go. Now you can see
Yeah,
it.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Here's the social emotional learning slide again that you couldn't see. But yeah, so the next slide will be getting into, just in case you want to read this really quick, the next slide will be getting into other technology applications, and those applications are companies that will sign the Connecticut Data Privacy Pledge and any district addendums. When I signed with them for our district, they didn't require a pro version or anything to sign, so they'll be pretty easy, and I find them really useful in my class, and I know other teachers in my district have too. So Socrative, short questions for the class to answer. You put some questions in, and the class can join the Socrative. You get a special link that you can send to students, and they answer the questions, and then you get immediate feedback. So it's really good performative assessment. You get immediate feedback from them and kind of what they're doing, and they can kind of get some more practice with anything you want to cover. WeVideo, you saw before, it's a video editing application. There's a free version for WeVideo, and there's also a paid version as well. Explain Everything and Google Jamboard, these are great digital whiteboards. Explain Everything I just heard about this year, so I'm trying to use it a little bit more, but it's actually a collaborative whiteboard, and you can record videos and make objects move and stuff in there. So it, I find this one's pretty useful, especially being virtual. And Google Jamboard, again, I like Google. Well, I like Google a lot. I use all their stuff, but Google Jamboard's a little more basic compared to Explain Everything. So if you just need like a basic digital whiteboard, Google Jamboard would be that one. And Padlet is a great for class brainstorming, making maps, flowcharts, grids, and more. This is collaborative as well, so you can make a Padlet. I think they allow 3 free Padlets in your account on the free version. And then if you get the paid version, they allow more. So if you don't really need to reuse it, then you can always, as long as you don't have more than 3, then you're all set. And it's great for students, like if you want to put up, what do you hear when you listen to this character melody, for example? So we're going to do a character melody on Star Wars, and we're going to choose this character. Here's a character, here's their leitmotif, here's their character melody. How does this make you feel? And the students can actually type what they hear when they listen to that, and things like that. So I find Padlet's also a great resource. So are there any other questions? That brings me to the end of all my slides.
Thank you, Eric. There are no questions right now in the question box.
Okay. And again, if anybody has any questions at any point, here, I'll go back to my email. You can always feel free to email me at any time if you ever want a resource or you want to brainstorm something, anything like that, you're always free to email me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Eric, thank you for sharing so much of what goes on in your classroom. It's always amazing to hear what kids are composing and doing and capable of doing. So thank you for that. We also appreciated hearing about the legislation and what we should be doing in our classrooms accordingly. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening and keep your eyes open for any other webinars that are coming your way. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Yay. Wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you.